It's time for Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
They've done a new study that shows Americans are dumber than the average human being.
But we're still kicking ass in childhood obesity.
Yeah!
Americans, by and large, and by a very large margin, just don't trust their news media.
I got it figured out. All that whistleblowing, the Russians did it. The IRS stuff and all of that whole litany of things. I firmly believe that the Russians must be behind all of that.
That seems to be the case now. It's like any major problem affecting the U.S. or any from stubbing my toe all the way up to the highest office in the land, it's always the fault of the Russians, apparently.
And now on a more serious note, what really is troubling to me today in this whole affair of blaming the Russians for interjecting themselves allegedly into our elections, first and foremost, they haven't been specific at all. Who exactly did it, when, where, and how? We haven't gotten any of that.
A first lady double standard. If Melania Trump were a liberal, it would be a non-stop love fest from the media. But since she's married to President Trump, it's a very different story. According to some in the media, she can't even decorate the White House for Christmas properly. Let's recall how Michelle Obama was treated when she rolled out her White House decorations.
She can sell magazines simply by being on the cover. She can sell sweaters simply by putting them on.
But when a conservative first lady decorates the White House, spends time with D.C. school children, she is accused of exploiting them.
Johnny and the Professor.
And another exciting episode of Johnny and the Professor.
Common sense for senseless times.
Where we talk politics, pop culture, and panic, which we seem to be doing right now. Ah! Buy all the toilet paper! Right?
Well, and now the hand sanitizer.
And hand sanitizer.
My wife went into a place to buy some just for the heck of it, because we do keep it around the house, and they only had one left on the shelf.
I'm just wondering if it's Mother Nature's way of just culling the herd, or if it's China's way of trying to get even with us for a president that's not letting them just have everything their way.
So they're literally, this is their bioweapon against Trump. I don't think China would be doing that because it's going to hurt them longer in the long.
How so?
Well, because they're the ones who are getting trade restrictions now. They're the ones that are not getting people wanting to come into their country. I mean, it's hurting them economically, which is what's reflecting in the stock market. Our stock market, has been jumping all over the place. It dropped a tremendous amount, and it literally had the highest raise in a day ever. And it pretty much seems to have stabilized now. I mean, it was running a fever, but I guess it's stable now, and it's feeling better. So, but I think most of that concern has been the harm that it caused China economically. I don't think China would be willing to deliberately put out a pandemic to try to if it would, it would only be fatal to Americans. I guess people with high cholesterol and too much body fat, right?
I don't know.
That's one way of defining Americans, and I can fall into that category myself.
Ooh, you said it.
Hey, well, if
the shoe fits.
If the shoe fits, or in this case,
when in Rome.
In the case the XX underwear fits, then that's the way it is, right?
That's probably bigger than XX. Come on now. Come on.
2X. I wear 2X underwear. That's what I can wear. Don't know.
Okay, whip them out. Let's see. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you meant the underwear. I'm sorry. Okay.
Did you clear the shelves of all the toilet paper that you could find?
No. I'm
just the hand sanitizer.
And she just wanted one for because we keep.
She didn't want a case of it
around work. I mean,
she didn't want a case of it.
No, it wasn't too worried about it because, again, this is. We'll talk about the coronavirus, in the show today quite a bit, I think, on and off. But, this is, I think it is just nature's way. Maybe it's nature's way of reminding us that we are part of nature, and no matter how tough and cool we think,
and how special we think we are,
that that viruses don't care about that. They don't care. We get sick. And you get sick like anybody else. I'm at an age, again, I'm revealing both weight and age these days, where they keep saying, do you want a flu shot? And I go, no, thank you. I don't need the flu. I just get over it myself. I only get sick once in a blue moon.
Right.
Because, when I get sick, I get sick. and then my body recovers, and I figure I'm ready for the next round when it comes through. I'd rather let my body handle it naturally than put in flu vaccinations, which I have some serious arguments. Aren't you just mutating flu viruses faster by doing vaccines? I mean, are we not creating more dangerous viruses in the long run? I mean, the influenza, the flu, used to be the big killer. If you went back in the 1800s, they talked about the influenza was in a town, the town was quarantined.
Right.
Because people died of the flu. You know, people died of the measles, too. I mean, there's a lot of things that are just common diseases.
And more people die of the flu now than of the corona.
Well, not even close. It's not even close. From 2019 to 2020 so far, the deaths by flu or influenza in the United States alone are from, and they don't even have accurate figures on it, but it's from 20 to 40,000 people have died from it, from the common flu. And this, you know, and the coronavirus is so far gotten 8 people, 9 people. Something like that. I mean, as long as you're reasonably cautious about it.
It's all Trump's fault.
Well, yeah, they're trying to call it the Trump virus. Never let the member. It's never. Rob Emanuel from Chicago said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And so, you know, you can't get him with impeachment. You can't get him with Russia. You can't get him with Ukraine. You can't get him with porn stars. You can't get him. So we'll throw the virus at him, and hopefully that'll get him. And the bad part about that is I've been reading what this council the president's put in place, and the members of it, they're very prominent people, and they seem to be handling it very well. The big issue is getting test kits out, and apparently they're going to have test kits, 1 million test kits or something distributed in less than a week.
According to Bernie Sanders, this is the most dangerous president in the history of America.
Some men aren't looking for anything logical, like money. They can't be bought, bullied, reasoned, or negotiated with. Some men just want to watch the world burn.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
Well, he's got a lot of people listening to him and believing him and supporting him. That's why.
Okay. And apparently Joe Biden's going to probably end up getting rid of him in the long run, because that's, again, something that happened recently was Super Tuesday. The big thing where all the different states, 14 different Democratic primaries were run, and no surprise, Sanders won, I think, 3 or 4 of them. He won California, which is a big amount of votes, but on the other hand, who's surprised that Bernie Sanders won California? And that
Right.
was 33 electoral votes from that 33. That's not true. It's not electoral votes. It was 33 of the total delegates for the Democratic convention. He also won Colorado, and let's see, I'm trying to remember what else he won. Utah, which I thought was strange, because Utah is generally fairly conservative.
Right.
And Vermont, well, that is his state. If he didn't win Vermont, then he'd have to truly be embarrassed, like Liz Warren, who did not win her state as a senator, which is Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders has not changed his mind since the time of Soviet Russia. Good comrade Sanders is still thinking, that he's longing for the days when he can be a Russian commissar and everyone else gets to live in the misery of communism. So it was interesting. The big thing I thought was fascinating about Super Tuesday was it got rid of Bloomberg.
Right. What's up with that?
He spent $500 million to be humiliated.
That's chump change.
But still, it's the $500 million to be humiliated. I'd have told him that he wasn't going to win for $1 million. I mean, I'm easy. I would have told, and I'd also told him he's short. If Bloomberg had just ran ads and done select interviews and not done debates, he probably would still be a contender.
Mm-hmm.
But he walked into that debate, and and again, Liz Warren went after him with a vengeance, and we revealed that he's uncharismatic. He's just this rich elitist. I mean, if he were lived in the time of Louis XIV, the French would have been coming for him to put him on the guillotine. He's just the normal elitist, rich man who thinks money is the answer to everything.
Well, it's my answer to everything.
Well, it is the answer to a lot of things. I'm not going to do anything against that. But I do think that, he honestly doesn't understand the world, because he has gotten to the point he's so rich now he understands business. But not trying to tell people that you can be a farmer. Anyone can be a farmer.
Yeah, anybody can do it.
And again, we had Victor Davis Hanson that was on a show talking about that, and his family literally are farmers. He owns a ranch, pointing out to, most of the evolved things that have happened in the history of the world are focused around farming. It isn't until modern times when technology, when farming takes a back seat. Everything's been carried historically by farming. So anyway, so he's out, though. Apparently Bloomberg is going to back Biden. So apparently, Biden, it's like the Frankenstein monster. It lives.
Right. They wrote him off.
Yeah, I thought he was dead. They were calling him a zombie candidacy.
Now he's the comeback kid. All right, Rocky.
I can't really use kid and Joe Biden in the same sentence.
Well, you're right.
I mean, it's like, okay, our congratulations. Now it's the battle of the old white guys. Is it you want the crazy old communist
says the old white guy.
Hey, compared to these guys could be my dad almost. Some of them are, that's a scary idea, but we won't get on to that.
Right.
You want the crazy communist, or do you want the crazy, big government? And let's go back, swamp guy, which is Joe Biden. I mean, it's not much of a choice either way there. But it's all old guys running again. So much for the diversity, I guess, of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, what's up with that? What happened to the diversity of the Democratic Party?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering, will Biden try to pick somebody, I don't know, like a Kamala Harris or someone like that, to try to pull somebody in to get more color in the ticket?
The token not white person, you mean?
That's what it would come down to. I mean, you could make the same argument with Liz Warren because, we haven't had a woman vice president either. And anybody who's running with Joe Biden as a vice president, most people think is a good possibility could be president. Just because, I'm sorry, Joe Biden is definitely... Do you think he'd make a full term as a president?
Nah.
I mean, I don't wish ill of him, but he definitely has lost a few steps. Did you hear the part of him about talking about the Declaration of Independence?
Oh yeah, and then Super Thursday, and this is my wife and my sister, and had them mixed up. And
right, you should generally know your wife from your sister, unless you live in a very strange family.
Right.
But the whole point on with that, you hold these truths to be self-apparent. That all men and women are created by the thing. It's the thing. Well, yeah, he's a member of the Fantastic Four. Last time I heard the thing, but other than that, what thing are we talking about? Right. So, yeah, it's been an interesting political whirlwind this week, and we'll have to see what comes out of it in the end. But I think if Biden does get the nomination, Trump's going to eat him for breakfast. On the other hand, if Sanders gets the nomination, Trump would eat him for breakfast. The big problem is if Biden gets the nomination, is Sanders going to take his ball and go home? Is he still going to try to run with his Bernie bros? Is he still going to try to faction the party?
Would it be like the Ross Perot kind of taking away the vote?
It could be a situation, but in Bernie's case, Ross Perot is the reason why Bill Clinton got elected. Okay. Because Perot split the vote, the more conservative vote. And I can understand, Perot actually had some good ideas at the time when he was running. He was talking about deficit, he was talking about small government and all the things that conservatives are generally supposed to be interested in. But in the case of Bernie, if Bernie decides to fight in any way, especially if he runs as an independent, the Democrats will get trounced. I mean, Trump might take California, because if you think about it, if the California votes between Biden, Bernie, and Trump, who's going to get a majority? The Republicans will all vote for Trump, and that generally runs at about, in California, that runs about 33%. So I mean, they're splitting that. It would be close enough that he could actually win California, and California is the winner-take-all state. I don't think he will run, Bernie. But I don't know. If he gets a majority of the delegates and gets the convention, and the superdelegates take it away from him, all bets are off at that point, I think. So it's going to be interesting. And it's funny. The most interesting thing about it actually may not be Donald Trump in the presidency. It might be watching the Democrats take out the knives and go at each other. Isn't there a movie called that, Knives Out or something?
Probably.
Yeah, it's just recently some movie. So, what's going on in the more entertainment-based world?
Oh, I don't know. The Million Mom March?
I heard about that. There are million mothers protesting against some new Disney movie because it has an alphabet person in it.
Right. It's pushing the alphabet agenda, so they're marching against it.
Well, I assume since they're opposing this, they must all be homophobic, toxic people, right? Isn't that anybody who says anything against any of the LGBTQ people, any of those? Doesn't that mean? But aren't women all supposed to be believed? It's strange. I mean, is there really a purpose why Disney needs to put I got the impression it's a transsexual character when I read a little article on it. Somebody that, rather than a trans, rather than, LGB, lesbian, gay, bisexual. I stop there on the alphabet, people. After that, I don't need the rest of them in there. When I was teaching, if I had a student who said, Professor Arms, I'd like to call me, I call my students by the last name. So I want you to call me Miss Smith, even though it's a guy, obviously dressed. I would say I would honor them on their if they asked me nice about it.
Yeah, they were nice. They were polite. They weren't confrontational or anything.
I would say I will do that. That I believe in courtesy, but you will be aware of the fact that if I call you that, other students may think it's unusual, and you don't have a right to be offended because they're confused or unusual, think it's unusual that I'm calling you by a pronoun that's obviously not of the same physical gender of you.
Right. So how did that turn out?
I only had one student that, and it wasn't an issue. Again, I taught quite a few years ago. I was cutting edge back then.
Oh, I bet.
So, but now...
And I see why you're not teaching anymore.
Well, that's one of my problems in general, is I'm too much for my students and actually tried to teach them to think.
What?
That really gets you in huge trouble in the academia.
What were you doing trying to teach them? You're supposed to push agendas and stuff.
I didn't believe in indoctrination. I believed in critical thinking.
Oh, well.
So that much for that.
I guess that's why you're not teaching.
So what's this Disney movie they're coming out with? Is it
I don't even remember.
Is it Upwards, Onward, Outward, something like that?
Something like that.
But anyway, anything new happening in the wonderful world of Disney and the realms of that?
Oh, just people are speculating why Bob Iger stepped down, and he's not definitely out, though. I thought he was out. Like I thought he was removed, but he kind of removed himself. He's still like at the head of the board of directors or something like that. But I kind of think, and I'm probably way wrong, I kind of think that he wants to run for president. Okay, eventually.
I think Iger running for president, though, would be a real goofy idea.
He wants to. You wait.
He's I think he's I think he'd make a very Mickey Mouse president, though.
Oh, that was bad.
Well, you didn't catch the goofy part in the beginning.
Yeah, I didn't. That went over my head. Totally.
So
but I've been up since
just like
3.
Just like little Mike, right? Everything goes over his head, apparently, according to Donald Trump.
That was funny, though, when he did that.
Oh, but like I said, Trump is funny. You might not. You don't.
But he's evil. He's supposed to be the most evil, most dangerous president ever.
According to Bernie Sanders, to Bernie Sanders, he is the most dangerous president ever, because he's trying to actually establish an America with smaller government. He's actually trying to listen to the American people and give them prosperity, not just give them control by the government, which is what Sanders can say whatever he wants. You socialist, fine, you're a socialist, which means you're pushing for a dictatorship, because you want a government that has ultimately nearly all control over people's lives.
Right.
And that's fine. And of course, you're amongst the elite who get to make those decisions. Welcome to the Communist Party. Tovarich Commissar. You are in the right place. So
I was talking to someone the other day, and they had said something to me, and I wanted to run this by you because you're a history professor, about the American Revolution.
Okay.
And it was fought in part. Well, Britain wanted to abolish slavery.
No, that's not true. Great Britain didn't abolish slavery until like 1823, I believe, is when they actually did it, and they did it by ending slavery, and they bought all the slaves. So obviously, in the Revolutionary War, it couldn't have been an issue. And they were, at that time, the English, amongst others, were actually in the slave trade business still. The English and the Dutch and and a bunch of other nations of the world, including, of course, the nations of East Africa, because it was to the advantage of any tribal leader or anyone who ran a city-state or anything in East Africa to trade with the slavers, because they got rid of people who were potentially their enemies. They would go off and capture tribes that were their enemies, sell them to slavers, and get better technology for it. So it's a win-win for them. They got money and technology and got rid of people that were potentially threats to them. So, people don't want to talk about it. You wouldn't have had a slave industry out of East Africa if you didn't have people in Africa actually gathering slaves up for the slave traders. You think some plump Dutch guy gets off a ship running into the Khoisan areas of Africa trying to catch slaves? What chance does a white guy have of that? They can't even survive the heat or the diseases in that area, but people in the area could gather them up for them, and that's how the trading worked. Roots had them going off with the slavers and putting, catching them in the manacles and all that, and it's one in 1,000 times. I mean, that could have happened. You actually cap someone in a coastal area. But no one wanted to go into Africa because Africa has sleeping sickness and disease and malaria and things that the Europeans have no resistance to. Obviously, slavery was an issue because it comes up in the Constitution. Once we got our freedom, what they call the 3/5 clause, and everyone says, well, that says that a slave is 3/5 a person. I go, no. That says that a slave is only counted for the purpose of representation as 3/5 of a person because they're a non-voting individual. It wouldn't have mattered if they were black or native or anybody else at that point. So I mean, the 3/5 clause was actually what we would consider the more conservative people, the abolitionist people who wanted to get rid of slavery. It was their fight. They wanted them not to be counted at all because that way the slave states would have been able to be forced out of slavery quicker. The compromise had to be 3/5 because if not, you wouldn't have had a constitution. There were pushes in the 1840s and 1850s for the repatriation of slaves into Africa. Liberia, as a nation, a lot of them came there originally were repatriated slaves. The nation of Liberia today. And Lincoln was one that had no problem with the idea of doing that, but Lincoln, of course, was opposed to slavery. He was an abolitionist. He wanted slaves to be free. If they wanted to go back to Africa after they're free, that'd be fine. But that, just like if you free the Irish, they can go back to Ireland, I guess, right? Same idea. You can go back to where you want once you're a free person. So I think your person's reading is reading propaganda, and a lot of historians try to rewrite the issues because they want to make it sound like for some reason that the slavery wasn't a product of the Democratic Party, because it was. The slave factors became the Democratic Party under Andrew Jackson, and it carried forth all the way to the Civil War as the party of slavery. It's also the party that had Jim Crow. It's also the party of separate but equal. The segregation, congratulations. The Democrats tried just said, we're actually not that in the 1960s, and it isn't true. The only reason the South became more Republican is because it became less racist, not because it became more racist. But hey, I only know that. What do I know? I'm only a professor of history, after all.
Right. What do you know about history? It's your white privilege.
Yeah. What can I say?
So, who's our guest coming up?
Our guest today is going to be Caroline Holden from Grace Hartman Department of Health. And
is she going to tell us to panic about this coronavirus thing?
I think it's going to be more the other way around. We'll have to get good information about what's happening and let people deal with it in a...
Now buy all the toilet paper, quick! Ah! Sorry.
Johnny's obsessed with toilet paper.
Well, no, it was pointed out that, Walmart sold out of toilet paper because people were freaking out about this coronavirus.
Oh, I thought it was something to do with your toilet training.
No.
This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
When they lecture the rest of us about how we need to live, you would expect when you arrive in Los Angeles for things to be beautiful, for things to be clean, right? They lecture us, oh, you can't have plastic straws, but everything plastic can be found on the streets of Los Angeles. Absolutely filthy. It's filthy. This is what California is becoming because for too long, progressives, which I always say, there's something about progressives that it always leads to regressiveness in our society. Like if you want to go backwards, hire a progressive.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
Anyway, we all went, all the parents, and everybody's there, and everybody's got their phone. Every single parent. It was an amazing thing to watch because kids are dancing, and every parent was blocking their vision of their actual child with their phone. And the kids, I went over by the stage, and there's people holding iPads in front of their faces. It looked like we're all in the witness protection program. Like the kids can't see their parents. And everybody's watching a shitty movie of something that's happening 10 feet. Like, look at your kid. The resolution on the kid is unbelievable. If you just look, it's totally HD. Why are you taping this? You're never gonna watch it. In a million years, you're not gonna watch videos of your kids doing shit you missed the first time it happened. You don't watch it, you just put it on Facebook. Here, you watch it. I want to take a nap now. And then you get to read all the comments. Oh my God! It's so cute! And guess what? They're not watching it either. They're not watching the video. These kids are dancing for no one.
This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
There's a rumor floating around that Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is heading back for reshoots. Now, yes, reshoots are a normal part of the filmmaking process, but in terms of the recent batch of Star Wars films, late in the game reshoots usually spell disaster.
They are reiterating this idiotic notion, which is unfortunately put out there by professors and blue check mark leftists in public school systems, in which you've limited people's individuality, you've limited people's ability to relate to other individuals, to their color, their race, their gender, ethnic background, and so forth, which is bullcrap.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
Well, it's Johnny and the Professor, where we talk politics, pop culture, and panic. Panic and pandemonium? What was it? Was it panic?
Pandemonium, and pestilence, and a few other things. We have a guest today who will hopefully will help us quell some of the panic. And it's Caroline Holden.
Yes, I'm Caroline, and I am the director with the Grays Harbor County Public Health Department.
Oh, I got a panic! Coronavirus! Ah! Right?
Yeah, don't.
Oh, what?
Don't do that.
Oh, okay. I take it back.
It takes it back.
Good deal. Thank you.
He's just good at panicking.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, everybody seems like they're panicking. It's like, come on, relax, right?
Yeah, I get it. This is a new thing. It's scary for people. So what I'm hoping that we can do is that I can reveal a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes and in our heads as we're sort of learning more about this and deciding what to do.
So not panic is one thing?
Not panic is the first thing.
And foremost.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. So the coronavirus, we've been watching it come this way for a number of weeks. We know that it started in China, and that the initial people that were being tested for it were pretty sick. They were in the hospital, and that there were some people that were dying. And there was an original or initial approach that suggested that we were going to be able to identify single cases and then identify their contacts and sort of contain it on a case-by-case basis. And I think where we are now is in a situation where especially these cases that have occurred just over the last week in Washington State really demonstrate that most of the people who get this virus are not sick enough to need health care, and that there already is a great deal of transmission occurring out in the community. So the message or the ideas that people have about how this is going to work and what they need to do is really changing pretty quickly as we understand a little more.
Well, as I understand the virus, it has an incubation period of 2 to about 14 days. And of course, people think of it as the flus, but it's much it's much more closely related to the cold.
That's correct.
And it is a respiratory, and its symptoms are fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Obviously, a respiratory infection would give you shortness of breath. I have an EMS background. I used to be an ambulance driver a lot of years ago. So, but the main thing, so in other words, almost any cold you would get has almost the same symptoms as the coronavirus.
Yeah, in fact, the coronavirus it's related. It's a cousin of other viruses, also coronaviruses that have been circulating in the human population for decades.
Like the SARS viruses.
And even before that, I mean, there are at least 4 strains of coronavirus that have been present in the human population for many, many years. It's part of what circulates every year as part of our normal respiratory illness season.
If memory serves me, because I've read the CDC information on it also, about 80% of people don't even know they have it, or will just have a minor case and they'll just get over it like they would a cold.
Exactly.
And it's only people who have compromised immune systems or other factors involved in it or they don't get proper treatment, or just like anything, if you get any type of cold, if you don't treat your cold, it'll just get worse eventually if you don't take some time to recover and get yourself hydrated and all the things you need to do.
Yeah, basic self-care at home is going to be absolutely sufficient for most people. There are some folks who are more at risk of getting really sick and needing to be hospitalized. And like you said, those are the same people we know are at increased risk for the same thing to happen if they get the flu or other respiratory viruses. And those are folks who have an underlying chronic health condition like chronic respiratory problems, like diabetes, like other illnesses that compromise your ability to respond to illness. But most healthy people are going to have a respiratory virus that keeps them homesick for a number of days. They're going to get better, and they're going to go on about their life.
One of the insanities that I keep watching people is wanting out and buying masks. And my wife, again, has her own studio. She dyes things, so she actually keeps paper masks in to filter the fibers from getting in your nose and the like. But they have nothing to do with keeping out a disease. Their only purpose of a mask is to help you not spray on other people. It's the same as covering your or using a handkerchief. I mean, the masks aren't going to keep you sick, but they aren't going to stop you from getting sick, but may help other people not get sick from you.
Exactly. So the masks that healthcare providers use when they're providing care to people who are infectious with respiratory diseases, I actually have used them in the past myself when I've done home visits with people who have tuberculosis. Those have to be fit checked against your face, and you have to get a seal, and they're just not practical. It's not feasible to wear those for extended periods of time. So the masks that people are putting on their faces and walking around with for hours are not sealed properly, and they, like you said, they don't protect you from sucking air in from the sides of the mask and getting infected. Where they are useful is if you walk into the doctor's office, you may see a sign that says, if you're coughing, please wear a mask. That's what the masks are helpful for, is keeping the sick people from spreading their droplets out into the air.
And a lot of doctors' offices and clinics even have them on
Absolutely.
the counter for those specific purposes. Because I've actually dealt with hepatitis contamination when I was driving an ambulance back then, and it was a lot of years ago. This was when AIDS was just beginning to start too. And we were doing the same procedures for that back then. As far as Grays Harbor, I'd heard that we've had some cases in Grays Harbor.
Well, we have two people, as of noon yesterday, we had two people, what we call people under investigation, which means that they met the criteria that were established by the Centers for Disease Control to actually be tested for the virus. Basically what that means is that they were sick enough to be hospitalized, and they tested negative for all the sort of usual suspects that cause respiratory illness at this time of year. So yes, we have two people that are under investigation. I think we're at a point now with the way that this is evolving where calling someone a case is almost not meaningful anymore, because this is happening in the community and people have it and don't know it. So basically a case is someone who has a lab-confirmed diagnosis, but there are other people out there who have it. So basically it's a definition of whether you've been tested or not.
And the simple thing is, if you have cold symptoms, then you should isolate yourself anyway.
Right.
And if you do have to go out in public, then at least wear a protective mask so you're not to slow down the contamination of others.
Yeah.
Like the doctor office talks about, that you could wear a bandana. I mean, across your face. You might
That's
as well.
a look.
It's a look. Other than you get that old West.
Right. I think you're right. So if you are sick and you do have to go out in public, please do what you need to do to keep from broadcasting your coughs and sneezes out into the air. At this point, testing for COVID doesn't make any difference in the way that your doctor's going to make decisions about your care. No. And it really, because we know that there are many cases out there that aren't being diagnosed because they're just simply look like a cold, the test isn't really meaningful.
It isn't meaningful unless you're trying to, like you said, under extreme circumstance.
Right.
I understand the federal government, though, is putting out 1 million of the test kits. They're going to be coming out very quickly, from what I understand. They're moving.
Yeah. There's a lot going on at the state and federal level, and even internationally, that it's kind of disjointed at this point in time, and the messages are unclear because things have changed so much just in the way that we understand what's happening in the United States just in the past week. And Washington State is actually on the forefront of that because we're the first to really be demonstrating a lot of community transmission.
Is there any thought on, as far as states are concerned, we've had more reported cases than any other state, and I thought that's unusual since we don't have the highest population base.
Well, it's interesting. We had the first case in the United States in Snohomish County, and what's interesting, and I believe what occurred, is that we had that being transmitted, via people who had a mild illness. And the cases that started popping up last week that had no known travel were some number of generations of transmission out from that original case. The other probability is that people brought it home from areas where they traveled internationally, had a mild illness, didn't know they had it. So this has been spreading in the communities in Washington State for a number of weeks.
I was stuck at the grossness of the droplets.
Yeah, right.
5 minutes ago.
So as far as the Washington, the State Department of Health is, I'd heard that they're thinking about purchasing some facilities in case they need to isolate people.
They had, they were looking into some facilities where they had adequate negative pressure rooms, it's engineering that occurs in the patient care room that keeps the air from getting out of the room and going down the hallway and creating infections in other parts of the ward. I'm not sure where they're at in their thought process on that now that the picture that is evolving is sort of coming to light. I'm not real sure on what the utility of that is. I actually am participating in a call on Friday that will have statewide public health officials talking more about this, and I suspect that we're going to be moving more and more into a situation where this becomes about slowing the transmission versus jumping on each case and believing that we're going to contain it. That's not going to happen.
Well, that's almost impossible with any virus situation.
Right.
I mean, people are going to spread viruses around. And we mentioned earlier in the show that the death by flu in the United States, flu-related deaths in the last year from 2019 now, has been somewhere between around 30,000 people have died from the flu.
Yep.
And every year people, die of colds and flus as part of, and it's generally people with compromised systems or people who don't take proper treatment.
Yes.
So, that seems to be the answer. If you get sick, isolate yourself and give yourself proper treatment. If you can go to the doctor if you need to be tested if you're concerned, but always be aware of the fact that even anytime you go out in public, if you don't want to infect people, going out in public, you run the possibility of infecting other people.
Right. And your doctor may not at this point in time be able to test you because of the restrictions that the labs put on who they'll even run the test on. And again, we want people to base their decisions about whether to get health care on their condition, not on whether or not they are worried about having a particular virus, because the care, like you said, at home or from your doctor is the same no matter what the virus is that's causing your symptoms.
Any cold is the same. I've often heard it's the chicken soup method.
Right.
Go home, rest, keep yourself hydrated, eat what you can, and your body will get over it.
Yep.
If your fever gets above like 101, you generally are at the point, anytime in any illness, you should probably start talking to your physician at that point.
Yeah. At this time of year, we really like people to call their doctor and let them know what's going on, so that if they need to be seen, the office can be ready to have them mask up or whatever it is, so that they're not spreading it in the healthcare setting. One thing that's a little different about this year, because this is a new virus in the human population, is the concern now from a public health perspective isn't that it's a severe disease. but that it is one that there is no widespread immunity in the human population. So the normal viruses that circulate every year, a certain proportion of the population is going to have immunity, so they're not going to get it or spread it. When you have a new virus like this is very actually similar to the H1N1 influenza pandemic that we had back in, I was here talking in 2009 about that. We want to have people really be extra careful about all the things we're talking about, staying home when you're sick, washing your hands, covering your cough, because while we may not, at some point this is going to become part of the background of respiratory illnesses that happens every year, but while we still have this large population of susceptible people, we want to slow the transmission, and the reason is because if a lot of people get sick all at the same time, it can overwhelm our healthcare systems. Schools might end up closing because so many teachers are out ill, and it really has more to do with the fact that it can spread so quickly because it's a new virus than it has to do with the danger of the virus itself.
And of course, the fact that it does have a fairly long incubation period.
Yes.
That means you can be infectious for most incubation periods on most viruses, as I understand it, are less than a week, sometimes a few days.
Sometimes they're hard to define, and this one's new enough that I don't think it's been figured out yet exactly what the incubation period is, and certainly how long people are infectious. And I think as more and more cases are identified and we look back, we'll have better information about that. But we're still learning a lot.
And it's a shame, of course, since it originated in China, and the Chinese are not exactly very forthcoming on any information. I mean, they totalitarian government.
I see information about them, covering up or withholding information about that, and the concerns about economic impacts and that sort of thing. It is interesting that these viruses seem to originate in places where people are living in close proximity with animals, because typically what happens is a virus that is circulating in animals because of close proximity mutates to the point where it can infect humans and then spread from one person to another, and that is likely what occurred in this case as well.
That's when I was reading the CDC was talking about it, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, that it had to do with the wet markets.
Yes.
You end up with a lot of large animals and small animals together, and then when you get things that jump across species. Yep. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the old swine flu.
Yep.
Because people may not like to admit it, but pigs are genetically fairly close to us in some ways. That's why we can get diseases.
And we can use their heart valves and stuff in surgeries.
That's the advantage, and they make really good sausage. People won't get in. That's another matter. But
we won't talk about cholesterol.
Right. So it's not this whole coronavirus isn't an evil plot from the Chinese government or anything. You don't think?
I'm not qualified to comment on that, but it looks a lot like other things that have occurred naturally as part of just viruses.
How about Mother Nature's way of thinning the herd?
I'm not qualified to comment on that either.
I don't have a direct tie to Mother Nature these days.
Yeah. But
That's awesome.
If there is a plot, I am not part of it.
Okay. That's awesome.
So I think the main takeaway from this is that like every year we have diseases that come through. This is a new one. Treat it respectfully. If you're sick, remember to try to isolate yourself from others so you don't contaminate to people. And if your symptoms get to be more severe, make sure to contact your physicians.
Absolutely right.
Okay. And don't panic. You're trying to say don't buy all the toilet paper on the shelf, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, you might need that for other reasons.
Okay.
But yeah, certainly the masks in particular. I guess I will be kind of serious here about masks, because people buying those up in the belief that they're going to protect them somehow from being infected is actually making it difficult for healthcare providers to get them who really need them to deliver safe patient care. So I really encourage people to not do that.
Don't buy them up there, Professor. Come on, leave some for someone else.
Like I said, my wife keeps them in the house just because she uses them, because she uses powdered dyes and things like that.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, that's the only reason I've had to wear them.
Yep.
So anyway, well, I thank you for being the voice of reason here. That's what we wanted to have you in here, because John and I have been talking about this, and it's just everyone is so easy. People seem to enjoy panicking for some reason.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's new and you can't see it, and it's complicated, and I think it's also something that we're learning about. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and I am happy to come back if there's more I can help with.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Oh, before you go, sweet or savory? Do you have a preference?
Savory.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have any, like, a favorite dish? I don't know. I like food, so.
Oh.
And you can see the professor likes food, so, I mean, come on.
I'm really into Middle Eastern kebabs right now.
Oh, yeah?
So really savory with a little bit of heat.
Yeah? I'm a big-time wuss when it comes to heat, you know. Like, regular Tabasco sauce is, like, too much for me, but...
When I had to go off sweet, I had to go with heat.
Yeah?
That's my replacement, yeah.
I make shawarma at home every once in a while.
Yes. Lovely.
Yeah, it takes a good combination of unusual spices to make it.
I think that's what I like about it, is it's a really different palette than what we...
And I eat low salt, but I can make shawarma because they don't have to put salt in it.
Right.
But you have so many other flavors and other...
I don't even know what that is. I only know it from the Avengers movie at the post-roll credits,
Right,
and Iron Man's like,
there's a
shawarma place.
Yeah, it has turmeric in it and a bunch of Middle Eastern spices, and you cook beef in there's several different ways you can do it. I found a way you can do it on the oven, on the burner.
I would love to know more about that.
Okay, well, I'll dig my recipe up and I'll let you know. How's that?
You know how to find me. Awesome.
I know who you are.
Now, do you accept like inquiries just from the general public? Like, how could a person listening? I know we don't have listeners, but still, could they email you or anything like that, or do you just say, hey, go to the website? I'm too busy to answer 150,000 different emails.
Well, I absolutely try to answer all my emails.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we are really busy. We're getting lots of requests for information, and so if people can look at our website and look at the State Department of Health website, those are really the best places to get immediate gratification for your information needs. The State Department of Health also has a 24-hour hotline, so if people are really concerned and the website isn't giving them the information that they need, they can go to that website. It's www.doh.wa.gov, and they can talk to someone about what they're concerned about.
Yeah, some people just want to be heard, right?
Well, and I understand that when you're, when you're scared, sometimes you want to ask a question instead of just read information. So.
Right. You're so nice. You know?
I'm a nurse, I mean...
I'm vicious. You're so nice.
We all self-select for our careers, right?
Right. You want to wrap it up?
Well, I'll wrap up. The end of it is just closing up is that if you want to get in touch with the show, you should go to jpshowfm@gmail.com. We answer all of our emails that come in there, and all of our shows and programs are posted on YouTube. Look for Johnny and the Professor, put in quotation marks, and you'll find us every time.
This has been Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times.